Hello everybody and welcome to the final episode of Mull It Over for the season. I thought I'd keep it short and sweet as we discuss some of the new cards that were featured in the playoffs last weekend from the mini set Wailing Caverns. First off, we have Archdruid Narrolux, the neutral card that generates dream cards for 2 turns. Since certain dream cards are situational, I wasn't sure if Narrolux would fit better in board-based decks or control decks, but thankfully we can take a look at examples for both. When Muzzy faces NagiDon in the Rush Warrior mirror, he keeps Narrolux and plays it on curve. It gives what's likely the best outcome for the situation. Double Laughing Sister with conditioning in hand to buff them up. The non-targetable effect isn't especially relevant in this matchup, but just the fact that Laughing Sister can become a 2-mana 5/7 is insanely strong tempo. Even with conditioning on the other side as well, it would take something like Tent Trasher to trade cleanly. When Muzzy plays both of them on an empty board, NagiDon needs pretty much exactly a buffed Blademaster Samuro to clear it all at once, but doesn't have it. So even after a 6/12 Kresh gaining NagiDon armor, Muzzy takes an easy win. Possessy was also running Narrolux in his Rush Warrior, this time against Blitzchung's OTK Demon Hunter. Admittedly, it looks a bit lackluster on curve because Possessy wants to be way more aggressive, especially after it drops Ysera Awakens, which is almost always useless in the matchup. However, in this exact situation, the Dormant Minion, combined with the fact that Possessy didn't play anything on the next turn either, is actually highly problematic for Blitzchung, as he doesn't have a good target on which to use his I-Beam in order to get Skull of Gul'dan in outcast position. The awkward Skull timing forced Blitzchung onto several inefficient clears, ultimately leading to the Nightmare from the second Narrolux drop used on Kresh, pushing lethal with Troublemaker. Next up, we have NagiDon on his Control Priest, and he keeps Narrolux versus Luna's Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Nightmare as the first drop is usually less impactful in a control scenario, but with the Samuro in his hand, could be used for an efficient board clear at any point. Nightmare could also potentially be used on an opposing minion in order to kill it with Shadow Word Death. The second drop of Laughing Sister is quite good to gain NagiDon board presence after he cleans up Luna's minion with a Devouring Plate. What makes Narrolux even stronger in Priest is the ability to replay it with Raise Dead, from which NagiDon gets Ysera Awakens. In combination with what are already strong removal tools in Priest, he uses it to take apart wave after wave of Luna's minions. By the end of the game, the 2 Nightmares weren't even necessary, but Narrolux definitely still carried its weight. Another legendary from the mini set, Kresh, Lord of Turtling, was included in both Rush Warrior and Control Warrior lists last weekend. I didn't see anyone keep it in the mulligan in any scenario, even versus Miracle Rogue, which is the archetype it's probably most powerful against. That's understandable because it does take a while before Kresh is playable, and you'd much rather have your early game curve as Rush Warrior or removal tools as Control Warrior. But if you manage to play Kresh in a situation where you've stabilized the board, it absolutely locks down the game. However, an even more expensive legendary that gets kept every now and then is Mutinous the Devourer. I'd probably only recommend keeping it if you're in a disastrously unfavored matchup where your best win condition is to scam your opponent by chomping up a key card. Glory on Control Priest wasn't offered Mutinous in this mulligan versus Alan's Control Warlock, but was happy to see it so he'd have a chance at eating Ticketus or Yasharaj the Defiler, which are vital to Alan's fatigue game plan. Camera issues aside, it's a similar story for Blitzchung on Control Warrior versus Surrender's OTK Demon Hunter. Blitzchung keeps Mutinous to have a chance at munching up primarily Il'gynoth in order to destroy Surrender's combo. He slams the already infamous Murloc on curve, and while it doesn't get Il'gynoth, it might be facing some major stomach trouble instead, because it eats Acidic Swamp Ooze. That's easily the second best target because it protects Blitzchung's Bulwark of Azzinoth, which in turn protects against Surrender's OTK. And so the combined powers of a Rattlegore, a Giant Shield, and a Mutinous that probably now has ulcers are able to win Blitzchung the game. And that's it for the season. If you want to see more of Mutinous's best eats, I highly recommend checking out Top 5 Moments from the playoffs. Thank you so much for tuning in the past 2 months and for all your feedback on Mull It Over and on the stream. We'll catch you again in Masters Tour Dalaran and after a short break, GM Season 2. See you then!